That's what I'm waiting. I don't know, it's okay. Well, it's 7:31 by the time we do it, huh? Just say 7:30. Okay, it's 7:31. We call the meeting to order. Let's have a roll call, please.
Twenty-three supervisors are present.
Thank you. Also present, we have Eric Lemire from Human Services, Abigail Nasalik from Legislative. Sorry. Okay. Becca Cecil from PDAC, sorry. Alexa Didinsky from Judiciary and Law, and Angie Price from the Executive. Welcome to our meeting. Citizen comments. Any citizen wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
My name is Marita Huff. I live at 7939 34th Avenue. And I want to thank you all for your work on the budget. This is not work for the faint-hearted. I appreciate all that you've done. And I'm saying these things assuming that the supervisor of the engineer that is supposedly lost his job in this cycle thinks highly of his work, because I don't know. I'm not privy to that information. But I do want to just make the comment that, and we've all heard that you can save money by outsourcing or you can lose money on outsourcing. I printed off a whole bunch of facts and figures on losing money on outsourcing. I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but they run into things like this county in Tennessee was providing its own rental car service for $32 million, and they let that out to Enterprise, and all of a sudden it was $43 million the next year. But they somehow, through interesting budgeting practices, considered that coming in on budget, even though it was $11 million more. And then there's situations where you let a contract out to a company that doesn't do a good job. In the middle of the contract, you have to fire them, get another company, and get a contract with them, and you end up coming in over budget. So I'm no expert on these things, but assuming that you have a very good employee who is bringing contracts in on budget, or at least very close to it, you don't know what you're going to get when you outsource, and you might get somebody that can save you money, or you might get somebody that's going to really run you in the red. And so personally, I'm very conservative. I like to stick with the devil I know instead of the devil I don't. And so I would advise you to reconsider that move. Also, just seems like maybe that person that you're letting go who has the customer service position, maybe if you offered her half-time or something, she might just take it, because who wants to listen to all those complaints? If she's doing a good job, I think she should keep her job. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
Jacob Castile, my address 152 113th Street, Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. So I appreciate the county board listening to us tonight. I'm very encouraged about hearing the possibility of a new position added to our sheriff's department and the detective bureau. I believe it's something that's been long overdue. I am a detective with Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. I've been employed with the Sheriff's Department since 2011. In that time frame, we've seen numerous increases in our county: population, traffic, businesses, and overall crime. With the power that you guys have to increase the amount of detectives, we're able to clear cases at a higher workload, and we appreciate it. Since 2007, there's been an addition to the Sheriff's Department of 33 sworn positions: one additional captain, one additional lieutenant, 5 additional sergeants, 26 deputies, and 1 less detective. Everywhere has seen an increase except us. So I'm very enlightened to hear that the county board has brought up adding additional bodies up there to assist us in our jobs. I thank you guys very much, and hopefully you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
Jody Meerhoff, 7220 First Avenue. During the presentation of the budget at last night's meeting, the finance chair said the county board didn't subscribe to the proposition to defund the sheriff's department. Asked about it afterwards, he said no supervisor, organization, or individual had asked the board to defund the sheriff's department. He said that he made that statement because there is a movement to defund the police. I decided to research that movement here in Kenosha, here in Wisconsin. I found some activists had called for taking money from police departments to put towards community services like mental health and addiction treatment. I found false claims of defunding the police are being used as a political weapon during this election cycle against certain candidates. I learned Wisconsin is actually 15th in the nation for spending on law enforcement and corrections. I learned that one of the most significant pieces of legislation in Wisconsin introduced in this legislative session to keep our community safe and to fund and support the work of law enforcement was introduced by Representative Tip McGuire, a Democrat from right here in Kenosha who serves in the Assembly. McGuire was actually awarded the Assembly Legislator Award last month, right here in this chamber, for the work he's done on behalf of our county and state. So I found no evidence any Kenosha legislators were working to defund the police, just the opposite. I learned our current governor has made historic investments in our criminal justice system, tens of millions of dollars in training, recruitment, and bonuses for law enforcement. He's also made similar investments in our court system, in the state crime lab, in prosecutors and public defenders, and more. My research showed the governor and lieutenant governor are also working to address the root causes of crime. That helps keep law enforcement officers safe. As Stevens Point police officer Paul Petrowski said about our current lieutenant governor, he wants to ensure we have the resources we need to do our job while also going to the root of the issue to help stop crime before it has a chance to start. That seems like a great idea to me, so I continued with my research. At last night's county board meeting, a sheriff sergeant spoke about the impact of illegal drugs on our community and sheriff's department. I learned law enforcement regularly deals with the effects of addiction and mental health crises. So I researched to see if there were efforts to defund treatment services that might impact our law enforcement in Wisconsin. I found our governor has made some of the largest investment in state history to expand access to mental health treatment and expand addiction treatment services. Healthy communities make the job of law enforcement officers easier. Some of this funding came from the American Rescue Plan, passed by Democrats in Congress. I learned our governor and state Democrats attempted to reduce crime by limiting the number of illegal guns on our streets and keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals. For example, they proposed red flag laws which would allow the courts to keep guns away from violent domestic abusers. This is important because studies show 2/3 of mass shootings are perpetrated by shooters with a history of domestic abuse. Laws like this help keep our community and law enforcement members safer, but they were blocked by the legislature. I learned communities across the state have seen their shared revenue reduced since 2011, when Republicans took control of the state legislature and reduced the amount of money communities receive back from the state to help pay for important services like fire and police. Municipal operating costs in Wisconsin have risen by 16.7% since 2011, but shared revenue from the state has dropped by 9% during that time. To try to make up for this funding gap, communities have turned to referendums, despite the state having accumulated a multi-billion-dollar surplus. Governor Evers proposed returning a portion of that surplus to communities to help address crime and to support law enforcement, but was blocked by the legislature. So my research shows important and even historic financial resources and tools are being provided in Wisconsin to law enforcement members, and we can thank Representative Tip McGuire of Kenosha and our Democratic governor and lieutenant governor for that. State Republicans' reduction in shared revenue to communities like Kenosha to pay for emergency services like the police was the only defunding of the police I could find in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Mathewson. My mailing address is P.O. Box 225, Kenosha, Wisconsin, 53141. Wasn't planning on speaking, but I wanted to do some fact checking. August 9th, 2007, Sergeant Zorner pulled over a vehicle that almost hit the public safety building next door. That man got arrested for DUI. December 17th, 2008, he veered into oncoming traffic, hit another car. All three occupants of that car, grandma, grandpa, granddaughter, almost died. They all had to get life-saving treatment. And that man spent about 7 years in prison for almost killing that family of three. And Tip McGuire and Ton Onstad both sent letters of recommendation for this man to be pardoned. So I don't want to hear this tough on crime stuff about people like Tip. That's just almost comical. And there's this group in Kenosha, some of you may have heard of, Forward Kenosha. They advocate for cashless bail, and they advocate for defunding of the police. The previous speaker was a founding member of that board, so all of you that were smirking about the nonsense, that's probably why. I just wanted to correct the record. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Okay, announcement of the chairman. I have none this time, and we go in the supervisors' reports. Any supervisors' reports? Supervisor Uwas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our October 21st Joint Services meeting, I wanted to give you guys an update as to where our staffing is in departments. As far as our communications department, we are down still 7 telecommunicator vacancies. On June 16th, we closed applications for that position. There were 116 applicants. 4 candidates started on September 29th. And 6 additional candidates are currently in the background investigation phase. Another 911 telecommunicator hiring process is ongoing, and the application period will remain open continuously. 56 applicants are currently in the critical testing phase. Regarding the records department, we currently have 2 record clerk vacancies and 1 supervisor vacancy. A record clerk hiring process was ongoing and it closed on October 21st. An internal hiring process opened for the record supervisor position on October 14th. The application period for that position closed on October 21st. Applications for the records manager position closed on August 29th. After interviews and evaluations were completed, record supervisor Maureen Anderson was offered the record manager position. She took it, and we say congratulations to Maureen. Regarding fleet maintenance, all of our positions are filled, And regarding the Evidence and Identification Department, all positions are filled. Regarding Communication Department, 4 new hires started on September 29th. They have begun their initial orientation and training and will enter call take training on October 24th. We anticipate that they will finish their mid-year training in 2023. In the month of September, 4,747 911 calls were received by the Communication Department, with 95% of these calls answered in under 10 seconds and 98% of these calls in under 15 seconds. There were 17,359 non-emergency calls handled and 23 text messages were received during that month. In our Records Department, they reviewed 2,028 incoming case reports and supplements in September. Case review is an integral part of submitting complete statistical information to the State of Wisconsin Department of Justice for uniform crime reporting. In our Evidence and Identification Department, in the month of September, the technicians took 1,591 items, released, destroyed, returned 2,298 items, transported 97 items to the crime lab, processed 59 pieces of found property, collected 49 DNA samples, and completed 70 bookings. So as you can see, things are very busy in joint services, and we continue to work on the vacancies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your report. Supervisor Kubicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little housekeeping before we get started into this budget and bonding process. As you all know, I'm the Executive Director of Kemper Center Incorporated. Since taking that position, I've taken great care to remove myself from any county board actions or discussions regarding not only Kemper Center Incorporated, but the Kemper's property itself. If I feel that this is appropriate to ensure that there's not even a perception of a conflict of interest. Accordingly, I'm advising that I will not engage in any debate related to Kemper, and that I will cast my vote in favor of the budget this evening. It includes an abstention on those portions involving position or appropriations for Kemper, and I ask that the record reflect such. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I imagine everyone knows, I am a candidate this fall for the office of Clerk of Courts, and if elected, would be responsible for overseeing and managing the budget approved by the County Board tonight. While this creates no legal conflict, I'm aware that it has the potential for creating an appearance of a conflict. This potential is extremely challenging to resolve, as I firmly believe that the consideration of the annual budget is possibly the most important work we do at the County Board each year, and I am fully committed to my responsibilities as a member of this body. It is because I take those responsibilities so seriously that I do not want even the potential appearance of a conflict to become a distraction from the work we are doing tonight. For that reason, I am under no obligation to do so. However, I will not debate, discuss, or vote on the Circuit Court's budget. When voting for the budget as a whole later this evening, I will abstain from voting on that portion of the budget concerning Circuit Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nedweski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Human Services Committee was scheduled to meet yesterday at 6 p.m., but due to unforeseen circumstances of the invited speaker, Dr. Jennifer Freiheit of the Health Department, we will continue with the scheduled agenda in December's meeting, which will include a discussion of the 2022 Health Equity Report. I invite all to attend in December. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor reports? Any other supervisor reports? Any other supervisor reports? Seeing none, supervisor reports are closed.
Old business, policy resolution 4, second reading, 2 required. From the Finance and Administration Committee, a policy resolution 2023 Kenosha County budget.
Supervisor Rose.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move the resolution for the 2023 Kenosha County budget.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Gersten. Supervisor Rose.
Last night, I presented an overview of the various provisions in the budget and the policy resolution behind it. I don't want to repeat what I said last night, but I would urge your support of the budget and also reiterate the committee's thinking behind the budget, the philosophy behind it, and what it stands for. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Gersten, I know you second the motion. Did you want to add on that?
Yeah, yes, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend the policy resolution number 4, the budget resolution. My motion would add a project manager to the Public Works Department at a cost of $141,000 to be funded by highway aids. And if I get a second to the motion, I would request to keep the floor.
Is there a second? Moved by Supervisor Gersten, second by Supervisor Nordgen. Supervisor Nordgen, sorry, Supervisor Gersten.
So, through the chair, I would request that the Director of Public Works come forward and talk about the new position.
Okay, Shelley?
Good evening. In reviewing the proposal in front of you the last week and really analyzing the two positions that we're talking about, I would like to propose that we add a project manager position, essentially combining the two positions that are proposed as eliminated. This would report to me and would serve the facilities, highways, parks, golf, on a variety of projects as what they would call a project manager. This person would also have the customer service representation that is given in our office by one of the positions that is currently being eliminated in this budget. I have thought that we could rotate this position on the projects that they're working on, whether it's highways or parks in the capital improvement program, and be able to better situate the construction management side of it, being forth what we would lose if we lose these two positions.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. And just to emphasize, this is a new position and does not increase the tax levy. And with that, I yield the floor.
Okay. Supervisor Nordgen, I know you made the second. Do you have anything you want to add on that, or?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask first a couple of statements. One, I was against what happened at the finance budget hearing on last Tuesday simply because of two reasons. One, because of the timing on how the budget hearings played out. Public Works, their budget hearing was on the 17th, and then Judiciary Law was on the 20th. Therefore, we did not have a chance to even discuss this with Ms., I don't know, I'll call Shelley, Billingsley, Ms. whatever, but the Director of Public Works. And therefore, none of our supervisors on the committee could ask questions and could get any type of feedback or anything. I am of the belief that if Director Billingsley could come back up for a second. I'm of the belief that if we've hired people to do their job, we let them do their job. So my question, and I'll probably have more than one, is how long were you at Kenosha, and what was your position in the city of Kenosha?
So I began working for the city of Kenosha in 2003 as a project engineer, working my way up to the last 6 years being the Director of Public Works.
So prior to coming to the county, you were Kenosha Public Works Director for the last 6 years?
Correct.
Okay. The proposal that you have brought forth, I wasn't real sold last Tuesday that you were confident that you could do without these two positions, but now the proposal of combining, I guess, the two into one, how sure are you that you're going to be able to run the department as efficiently as it was before, including the costs of having to go outside and get outside or outsourcing?
I think the outsourcing would remain consistent, so I think the workloads of these two positions could be covered under this one. So the projects that were supposed to be outsourced as part of the proposal in the budget would continue to possibly be outsourced and the ones that were going to be kept internal would stay into this position to handle those internally.
Okay, and this isn't for you, this is for the board. At the Wisconsin County Association annual meeting this year, and I don't know if Supervisor Nutter, you were in the same couple of breakout sessions as I was. One of the things that they say the county board should not be doing is micromanaging, because it stifles the productivity of the county operations. I'm always contended if the head of the Public Works, Director Billingsley, had seen this, had a chance to review it and go through it, come here and tell us what her plan is and feels that it is the right plan, then I will support this amendment and fully support Director Billingsley. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gens.
Thank you. I would like to make an amendment to this to restore $44,900 in the community development educator line item, and also restore $129,517 in the municipal public customer service superintendent position, and also restore $141,651 in the project engineer position.
Okay, is there a second on that? Second by
I think that motion is in order under Robert's Rules of Order. It is contrary to the motion on the floor. If you support that, fine, but it has to be supported after we take action on the current motion on the floor, the First Amendment, in other words. You can't put two contrary motions before the board at the same time and expect us to choose. You have to vote one up or down, and if it's voted, then you go to the next one if it's applicable. But you can't have two competing resolutions on essentially the same subject.
Point of order.
So I would ask that it be ruled out of order.
Point of order. In the
1 second. Joe, should I take the point of order, or are you going to rule on that first? Okay. Supervisor Gens, can you state your point of order, please?
Thank you. In the past, we've built multiple amendments on top of each other, and you just vote and discuss the last one that's on there. That's the way I believe it's been done, but I will defer to what the Corporation Council says, and if we have to take the first one up and rule it up or down, I can still make an amendment after that, but I thought you could always stack them, so I will wait for the ruling. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait for Corporation Council to give us a response then.
God bless you.
I believe that the amendment proposed by Supervisor Gentz essentially is to substitute his proposal for the one that has been made by Supervisor Geertsen, and as such, I think it is in order.
Thank you.
Yes.
What does he, sorry.
It requires a simple majority.
Yeah, the question was on what vote would be needed to adopt, then it would be a simple majority.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk on Supervisors
Correct.
Gans. Okay. Could you repeat your motion, please?
Certainly. I'll make an amendment to restore $44,900 in the community development education line item or position. I understand it's under other professional services, but I want that restored into the budget. $129,517 restored for the municipal public customer service superintendent, and $141,651 restored for the project engineer position.
Okay, and I believe there was a second by Supervisor Kubicki, right? Oh, sorry, Supervisor Grady. Okay, now. Supervisor Basha, what's your point?
What I just heard was restated as a separate motion, not a motion to replace. So council just said a motion to replace could be taken up, but I never heard this as a motion to replace. I heard this as a motion.
Okay,
If you would like me to add
hold on.
to replace.
Let's have Corporation Counsel answer on that.
Ultimately, it is the chair's decision. I don't make rulings, I advise. The way I am interpreting the motion is that he is substituting his language, or he's moving to substitute his language for the language proposed by Supervisor Geertsen.
Which was my intent.
Joe, give me a second, okay? Please. Okay? Okay. Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clear the board, okay? So we'll know, because right now it's completely messed up. Okay, on your motion, Supervisor Gens, did you wanna speak on that? Okay.
Thank you. I did my due diligence and I researched these positions, and I figure, and I discovered that all of them are essential to the county, save the county money, provide for good programs and services to the community.
Okay. Supervisor Rodriguez,
Thank you.
what's your point?
The motion we have before us, according to your ruling and Corp Council's advice, is a motion to substitute. What Supervisor Gens is doing now is speaking on the motion itself, not the motion to substitute his motion for Supervisor Geertsen's motion. So I believe where he's going with his line of whatever his debate is out of order. We're discussing, should we substitute his motion for Supervisor Geertsen's?
That's
We're
not the
on
way
his
I
motion.
interpreted it.
Hold on. So it's appropriate to speak on that. Okay, well, can you give us your ruling on that? Thank you. It's opinion. It's opinion.
Again, my
Okay, sorry.
understanding is that Supervisor Gantz is now explaining why he believes that the language he's proposing should be substituted for the language that Supervisor Geertsen proposed. I don't know if it's semantics about whether it's debate or not, but I think it's appropriate for him to explain why he's made the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gens, go ahead.
Thank you. So, in doing my research and my due diligence, I discovered that these positions were important to the county, saved the county money, helped with projects and policies with the county, and I just think they're needed. And I think I will support the Sheriff's Department ads, and with these, the levy will go up 1.99 instead, and it will be under 2. So that's certainly a very good budget per the tax levy. If there's other creative means to fund these, bonding, revenue, any other way to do it, I'd be open to that. But at this point, I want these restored, and I think they're important, and I think they should be restored. So at this time, I'll yield some of my time to Supervisor Gaschke to explain why one of the positions, the PDEC position, should be.
No, there is no yielding time.
Okay,
So
well,
Supervisor Gaschke
I'm done
can take.
at this point.
He can take a position
Okay,
to speak
thank you.
whenever the time comes. Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Director Billingsley back up again, a couple more questions.
Shelley, please.
In the last 8 days since you were last, I guess last Tuesday, so until today, how much due diligence and research did you do on both of these positions? Why are we looking at combining these positions? Those 2 other positions, I can't talk about the PDAC position, I don't know anything about that, just the 2 positions that are, fall under Public Works. Can you turn that on? She got it.
Okay, sorry. Since last Tuesday, I've spent almost every day going through the job descriptions of what those 2 positions were, what they would provide, and how we could move forward in knowing that we could still get the efficiencies in the department that the board wants to see. So in doing that, I really believe that we would not be able to function with 2 gone, but we truly probably could function at the same capacity that we are today with 1 position, being a project manager, combining both of those job duties into one position.
And why would you say that?
In reviewing there was a lot of, how I understand how these jobs were created, that they did a lot of strategic planning in the upfront, and that was a lot of great work by these 2 individuals to get that position going. Now that we have strategic plans with our facilities and a customer service program that really kind of documents this, I truly think that those two systems will help aid having this to be 1 position. So I think if those weren't in place, we'd be talking a different story. But I think that they have the programs in place to really move this 1 position forward and be able to cover both of the job duties into 1 because of the efficiencies that have been gained.
Okay, thank you. No disrespect to Supervisor Gens, I will put more emphasis in on the person who's doing the job, their diligence and research on the actual jobs from 10 years ago, I think is when they started, to present. And again, I just think that we've hired we hired Director Billingsley to do a job, and in the last, sounds like 7 or 8 days, she spent a lot of time on this, more so than I could, probably more so than any of these supervisors could, and has all the intimate knowledge of what happened and what was going on. So I will not be supporting the replacement amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nedweski.
Through the chair to Supervisor Gens. You mentioned in your motion that you discovered in your research that the restoration of these 3 positions would result in money saving for the county. Could you please expand on that statement and in terms of measurable money saving in each particular position?
I also said policies and community service. But the money saving, I do know, one of the positions changed the policies on how we go out and when we're able to bond for things. And with the ability to bond earlier than later, we've saved over $500,000.
Could you please be more specific on that?
No, I don't micromanage this, but from what the research I was told, and it's documented, so if somebody wants to go check, they can. Just on roofing projects, HVAC, other projects, I was told that we have saved that amount of money. So if we don't do that, we're either gonna have to have somebody else do that or not have those savings. So that's my answer to you.
Is that on one particular position, or is that on all three positions?
Well, that's on one. The other one is, the PDEC position, I tried to have somebody else who was more knowledgeable talk about that, but I had that explained to me about how some of the programs that they do are integral to our community. And if you would let that person speak, I'm sure that they can elaborate on that.
Through the chair to Director Billingsley.
Okay.
Thank you, Shelley. Could you please describe the qualifications that would be required of the proposed newly created combined position?
Sure, let me grab my notes just so I make sure I cover them. I would require it be an associate's degree in construction management, engineering, or related field, or any equivalent combination of education, training, and experience that provides the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Any number of years' experience?
It would probably come out in the interview, on interview questions, but typically I would look for 3. But it's depending if we do have qualified candidates that have an engineering degree or have a construction management, I wouldn't eliminate them from an interview.
And what were the qualifications of the 2 separate positions that are now being combined?
I believe that the municipal and public customer service superintendent had some relative experience for kind of similar to the description I just read to you. And the facilities project manager, or engineer, sorry, was a engineer with a bachelor's in engineering, and it was recommended that they have an EIT or a PE, but that was not required.
What is an EIT or a PE?
So an engineer in training certification or a professional engineering license.
Did the person in that position have either of those 2 qualifications previously?
My understanding is they have an engineer in training certification.
And the new position will not require either of those certifications?
Correct.
And what is the pay grade for the new proposed position compared to the previous pay grades of the other 2?
Can I defer to HR? Just
Yes.
to double check to make sure.
Clara, you're welcome to approach the podium.
Sorry.
So, can you restate your question, please?
There is a pay scale proposed with this new proposed position. What is that pay scale compared to the 2 positions that are proposed to be in combination, the project engineer and the customer service public works position?
So the customer service superintendent was at an E7, and that's where this is being proposed. The project engineer was at an E9. Do you want those pay ranges?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the current E7 is a minimum of 63,049 with a maximum of 87,639. And the E9 is a minimum of 72,968. I'm sorry, 70,843 with a maximum of 98,471. So those are the current pay grades.
And those are the salaries. What is the cost to the county in terms of levy of those positions, including benefits?
I can't speak to levy, that would be finance, but we would include roll-ups on that, and finance has those figures.
Finance?
I believe the total for those 2 positions were $271,000.
And what would be the total for the proposed combined position, including benefits?
I believe I heard the motion was for $141,000.
141. Okay. Thank you very much. I yield.
Thank you. Supervisor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was going to be to the maker of the motion, the supervisor from District 3. How would he fund the restored positions? And he did answer it in his explanation by saying it would be a levy increase. So we would increase the levy from the 1.5 that came out of finance to just under 2. So, and with that, I yield the floor.
Thank you. Supervisor Geschke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to focus my comments specifically on the UW educator position. The other two public works and facilities positions I believe are important and worthy and should be added back in, but again, I'm going to focus my comments on the UW extension position. And let me just be clear that I'm in favor of the 3 additional Kenosha Sheriff Department deputies and detectives. In my mind, this isn't an either or. We should be able to add those public safety positions as well as maintain these other positions. All right, so let me talk about this UW extension position. As the former chair of Public Works and Extension Committee and as the current vice chair, Wisconsin's always been very forward-thinking, and a primary example of this is the Wisconsin idea. It's the concept of the UW-Wisconsin system that defines the boundaries of UW-Wisconsin as not being within the 4 walls of a particular campus or within the 4 walls of a building, be it at UW-Madison or one of the other locations such as our local Parkside. But instead, the Wisconsin idea is built upon the concept that the university's borders and boundaries extend across the entire state. They go from Lake Superior all the way down to the Illinois border here. They go from Lake Michigan across the state to the Mississippi River. The UW system extends across the entire state. So in other words, the University of Wisconsin is not just for the students, but it's for all citizens. It's for all of us. The University of Wisconsin benefits the entire state of Wisconsin, and a key example of that is the UW idea is the UW extension system. These educators, they provide both youth and adult programming. They provide training. They provide extracurricular activities, continuing education opportunities for everyone across the state of all ages, and people across our county right here in Kenosha in particular. Not only do these UW extension educators benefit our communities by what they do, but they are also an incredible value. Did you know that for each educator or professor in the UW extension system, Madison only charges us about $45,000? That's it. And that's less than half of what it actually costs to fund these positions. So in other words, we get the benefit of a full-time educator, but we pay less than half of their salary and benefits. I mean, talk about an incredible value. And did you know that Madison only charges Kenosha County for the positions that are currently filled? In other words, they prorate us the cost. They only charge us for the months out of the year that a position is actually filled. So for instance, Kenosha County's most recent UW Extension Community Development Educator, the position that we're currently discussing, recently left their position after about 12 years. And so guess what? Madison is not currently charging us for this position while we seek to fill it with another highly qualified candidate. As county board supervisors, the budget is, in my opinion, one of the most significant duties that we fulfill throughout the year. We must carefully allocate and spend taxpayer dollars of which we are stewards. But let me tell you, if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, if you're looking to stretch our dollars as far as you can, if you're looking for a good deal and to be good stewards of our taxpayer money, UW Extension is a great investment. Again, they provide quality programming and education for all ages and all residents, and we only pay a fraction of the actual cost, but we reap the full value and benefits. All right, so this community development position in particular, this over the last several years was instrumental in organizing Kenosha County's food pantries under a newly formed food bank. not just here in the city, but west of the I and all across the county, in order to better meet the needs of some of the most vulnerable people within our community. This position was also instrumental in analyzing energy usage throughout Kenosha County's buildings and facilities, making recommendations and changes to help us save money through more efficient practices. And this year alone, 2022 alone, there were over 450 participants in the community development programming in Kenosha County alone from January through September. Over 450 people participated in the programs under this position. And do you know how much this position costs us? Only about $45,000 a year. Again, just a fraction of the actual costs. So if we decide to cut this position from our budget, well, you know what's going to happen? Madison is going to take their money, and they're going to simply shift it to one of the other 71 counties. Other counties want educators. Other counties want resources. And if we cut this from our budget, Madison will give this money to them. All right, so, you know, I can understand that some people may be more willing to eliminate this position since it's not currently filled. Let me be clear, this position has only been unfilled, only been open for about 3 weeks. But let me remind you, Madison does not charge us unless the position is filled. So we can take our time. We can look for the right person for this position, and we can hire them when we're ready for a fraction of the actual cost of what they give back to our community. Along those lines, did you know that our UW Extension agriculture educator position is also currently vacant? Did you know that it's been vacant for quite some time now? But curiously, Vice Chair Decker nor any other Finance and Administration Committee member, nobody else suggested that we eliminate this agriculture position, only the community development position. If you're really about saving money, you should suggest eliminating both. So I'm all about being a good steward of our taxpayer dollars. I'm all about getting the most value for our money, and I encourage you to add this UW Extension educator position back into our budget, along with these 2 public works and facilities positions. Thank you.
Just a question, Supervisor Geschke. I know you mentioned something about if you wanted to eliminate this position, just to make a motion, just to do it. Was that a motion to eliminate that other position, or just?
Can you restate your question, Chair Nudo?
Okay, during your comments towards the end, you say that nobody made a motion to eliminate the agriculture position, something like that. Maybe it should be eliminated too, unless I misunderstood. That was not a motion that you made, amendment to a motion.
It was not.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify that. Supervisor Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. The question was asked earlier about a measurable, and one measurable was the one, before this person took over the position, or went into the position, there was a project for our roofs that was $1.5 million. As soon as that position was, or this engineer position was filled, he was able to remove $500,000 off of that. So that's the kind of work that he's done for the county. I mean, say again? Oh, I'm sure there are other examples. I know that one for sure, though. If Barna can come up to the microphone, please. During committee, there was a discussion during Public Works about our local transportation aids. That we are actually getting more than what was put in for revenues. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you happen to have that number on you?
I believe it was about 400,000 more than what we had budgeted.
About 400,000 more. So realistically, if we funded these 3 positions, which would come out to $316,068, if we used that, if we added that 400,000 to our revenues, we can re-put these positions in. there would still be $93,000, $93,932. Realistically, wouldn't that decrease our levy then? If we put the $400,000 in revenue back into the budget, or not back into, but into the budget?
I believe the math would show that there would be a net savings to the levy.
So that sounds like a responsible thing right there. So that is why I will support Supervisor against this motion. I mean, that's financially responsible, is to, we already know how much we're getting from the state in terms of the local transportation aid, so we should be adding that to our revenues. And instead of using, increasing the levy that was brought up, we should be utilizing, so if I need to make a friendly amendment to your motion, Supervisor Against, to...
You don't, hold on. That is, we're in the substitution of a motion now, so I don't know if you can make it, which I would, you cannot make an
Okay,
amendment.
well, that is why the substitution should be made over what is currently, because we can add the positions back in by adding our revenue, increasing our revenue, which would ultimately decrease our levy, which is the responsible thing to do for our voters and our constituents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin by saying that I think most of us in this room support the increased Kenosha Sheriff's Department funding for detectives, for patrolmen, and also for the data analyst. I think most of us in this room also support the county executive's budget as it was presented, with maybe a few modifications. The part that brings us to the juncture we're at now is procedural, and it delves into the area where county board committee has chosen to basically eliminate certain positions. I'm not saying this can't be done. I'm not saying it is not within the county board ability to do so. But from a procedural standpoint, it raises some very complicated questions. If you look at our position, we're legislators. We're here to make policy. We don't generally hire and fire. That's not our thing. We don't do that. We don't do it well. If we're an emergency, if we're something where the administration was not paying attention, we had to put the choke chain on them, yeah, maybe we should. But this particular thing to be done in committee and voted upon in committee, procedurally, I have very strong misgivings about it. In our own finance committee, it passed by the slimmest of margins. It was 4-3. And I can see that being reversed at any time should it have a similar circumstance. So just from a procedural standpoint, we're at this juncture, and I don't know in the future, do we want to go down the slippery slope of us as legislators actually implementing changes such as this? It would be somewhat unprecedented. I can't think of it happening in the past. So that's one point. The second point is a more practical application of what we're talking about, and I can't speak to the item that Supervisor Gaske spoke to, because that's not my bailiwick, that's not my area of expertise. Mine is in public works. I have a fair amount of history, a fair amount of years there. And the idea is that the two positions we're talking about replacing, combining, could not be more disparate. You're talking about an engineer, a civil engineer position who knows about things that are according to ADA code, according to different things that have to be done in a certain manner. The other position in highways is the public face that goes out and meets the public. And in the wintertime, it's plowing. You get your mailbox knocked over, it's in the right of way, it's really not on your property. In the summertime, springtime, culverts flood. Someone has to go out and explain to the property owner why water is backing up in their front yard. And it's really not their front yard, oftentimes it's the right of way. And then there's the mowing. People, there's one particular instance, it was 17 or 18 times in 2021, not 2022, where Supervisor Arbit, even though it's not his job, or I should say Director Arbit, had to go out and speak, or have one of his representatives go out and speak about the way this was being mowed, even though the property is part of the county right away. So this is the distraction, this is the type of situation that can take completely away from smooth running of a public works operation. The idea of combining these two, I mean, is this like a stopgap 11th hour message? Is this like something we're gonna try because we realized it really wasn't gonna work to eliminate two positions that we hadn't really thought about that much? I mean, it's really probably not the position that a forward-moving county such as ours might want to adopt. If this was a county on the decline, if this was a county that was stagnating, and we had to get every last dollar out because we couldn't make our bond payments, I would get that. But I submit to you here that we should be looking at things that move us forward, that keep us efficient, that keep us in the vanguard, not retrograde. Oh my goodness, let's patch this together, and we'll have this person go talk to culverts on Tuesday, and then they can meet with the people who are planning the next expansion for our civic campus. I think it was brought up by someone, I can't recall specifically, that when you hire an outside consultant to do some of these projects, they often want 10%. They're not in-house, they're outside consultants. So take a project that's coming up very soon, our job center relocation. What is it, better part of $10 million project, 9.6, whatever? Are we really gonna fork out $1 million to someone outside of our own little county employee group if we don't have to? I mean, you can do any of these things. County board can do anything that it wants. When you take a look at the rationale and how we have been able to internally, through these different positions, save money and save time. Yeah, the $500,000 for the roofs that was done as part of a project to say, okay, roof 1, roof 2, roof 3, let's do these in a timely manner. Let's send them out to bid first thing in the spring so that we're the first group where the contractor wants to get that business, we can take advantage of the savings. You have an outside person, an outside entity that wants to do that, I don't think you'll get that. You'll get some type of response, but you won't get that timely that we have to do. Second example, here, this building. The hardening of this building, making it less likely to have, shall we say, unfortunate events happen. Whether it's a riot, whether it's a person that feels that that not be treated fairly. I can read right from this report here, and just in Molinaro alone, which is not even talking about this building here, the project was, how do we make the glass so that it can't be broken, so it can't have a rock, sledgehammer, whatever thrown through it. And one of the options that was put forward, bulletproof glass. You can do that. It's about that thick. The only problem is your window infrastructure won't stand up to hold it because it's not designed for that. It's a total rebuild. Would have been $150,000 to do that just at Molinaro. Would have been lengthy and disruptive. But the engineer department for facilities noticed that just south of us at Ruther, they had this 3M protective film on one of their windows, and although many rocks and bricks and everything were thrown at it, it broke, but it held, it didn't shatter. It was a protective film, okay? So that was done at Molinaro, it's done here on this building, and it cost $8,000 to do just at Molinaro. So I bring these things up as specific examples of how we have done pretty well in the past, and we can continue to do pretty well, or we can take this quote-unquote hybrid route of putting a person in that can kind of do, kind of sort of, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Your choice. Vote it up, vote it down. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Supervisor Rose.
I think Mr. Gersten, in his motion, needs to clarify something to the board. When this issue came before the committee, there were two jobs, one called Public Service Superintendent, and the second job was Project Engineer. It was my understanding when you made your motion that you were combining those two job positions into one and giving it a new title. Yes, I am. That's exactly
Yes.
what his motion is.
Yes. It's not talking about his motion. He's talking about, the whole thing and what's came out to this point.
Correct, the main motion. You're trying to
Main motion.
jog that resolution out of
It's talking about
place.
the main motion.
So if you're going to combine those two positions, you don't eliminate the job duties of those two positions, as I understand it, when you're combining those two positions and job duties into one. I can support one person doing the job that two others were doing upon recommendation of the Director of Public Works, and paying that a salary commensurate with that single position and qualifications as a professional engineer, amongst other things. However, much to my surprise, when the job descriptions were stated to us by the staff, we find that the qualifications are quite different. It's an associate's degree, someone with or 3 years experience. This is not the same thing. You're creating an entirely different position. You're downgrading that position from what the current two positions are, a public service superintendent and project engineer. I don't think we're interested in doing that. I think that's a bad idea. When the when the county executive presented the budget to this board and went to the committee, those two positions were included within that budget. The committee, by a vote of 4-3, voted to eliminate. We can live with that, but you have to know what the consequences are of elimination entirely, because that's where you come up with this percentage for hiring an owner's representative. We used to do that before this position, a project engineer, was created. That owner's representative was exactly that. This was a technical person, an engineer who knew about construction and knew what construction was all about. You can't expect the county executive to go over there, whoever that county executive may be, and say, well, this needs taken care of and this isn't hooked into that. Those are technical issues. So this position was created to eliminate that very expensive idea of the owner's representative. The owner's representative was paid out of the bonding, wasn't even noticed. But you're talking about 10%, not some $141,000 for a project engineer. So I'm getting to the point, Mr. Gersten, that you need to clarify to us, is your motion combining those two old positions and saying one person, an engineer licensed in the state of Wisconsin, will be able to do the two duties of the positions of public service superintendent as well as project engineer, combining the job description of those two positions? Or is this a downgrade, as I hear staff saying to us this evening? That's not what we want. We don't want a downgrade here, and we don't want it slipped in the back door, because I don't think that's what the motion intends, but staff has another idea. I reject that.
Okay. Here we go.
I'd like to ask the director, Billingsley, because Supervisor Rose just said the position that is right now, it has an engineering license. You stated earlier that the current position does not have an engineering license.
You are
What's correct?
He does not hold a license in the state of Wisconsin. He is a engineer in training certificate.
Okay, so he is not a licensed engineer.
Correct.
So Supervisor Rose is incorrect saying that he is a licensed engineer right now.
Correct.
Thank you.
But he is an engineer, is that correct?
He has a bachelor's in engineering degree.
All right, that's the point.
Okay, anything else, Supervisor Rose?
No, thank you.
Supervisor Frango.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. I just wanted to talk to the public, position of the public service superintendent position. I don't think this situation
we're not in a situation where there's a zero-sum gain. We can very easily add these 3 positions back. In fact, as was suggested by Supervisor Berg, we can do it with revenue and even reduce the levy a bit. We could do it with bonding, or we could even put it on the levy, and if we did, it would still be under 2%, which in my opinion is quite low. I'm happy with any 3. I think the revenue suggestion is a good one, frankly. But I want to say this, I agree with Supervisor Grady that these positions are distinct, very distinct, and combining them seems problematic to me. I was present at the 4 Finance Committee meetings and listened very carefully to everything that was discussed. And one thing that I'd just like to point out that hasn't been mentioned is at near the end of the Finance meeting with Public Works, Clement, our Highway Commissioner, Clement Obanga, was asked, in point of fact, do you need this position? And he said in not so many words, almost in a pleading way, yes, I need this position. And frankly, my opinion is he's the director, he's our Highway Commissioner. If he says he needs the position, I think we should listen to him. And combining them, in my opinion, is just a convenient way to, as Supervisor Rose has pointed out, to combine what it comes to about 270 in half, or whatever. I think it's short-sighted. I don't think it's good for long-term. I think all 3 positions are important. Supervisor Gashke pointed out the UW position can save us money. Supervisor Grady has pointed out the importance of the project engineer, and Clement himself, who's the Highway Commissioner, has stated clearly that he needs this person. I know how busy he is, and I know the type of complaints he gets on a daily basis. He needs that position, and that's good enough for me. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Uwas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of discussion tonight on revenue and what the savings are. So through the chair, I'd like to ask Jim Comfort to come up to the mic.
Jim?
Okay, Jim, how long have you been employed with Kenosha County?
I actually work for Andrea and Orndorff. Right. How long have I worked for them?
Yes.
Since 2011.
And how long have you worked for A&O, but also worked at Kenosha County?
11 years.
All right, during that 11 years, can you just give maybe 5 examples of how that project engineer saved money for the county? Projects.
I can tell you projects he worked on.
Yeah, tell me some projects and what the cost savings was.
I can't tell you what the exact cost savings are.
You can approximate it. I won't hold you to it.
Well, I know he worked on the Anderson Arts Center. That was a $4 million project. We got $1.5 million, I think, from the city. And I know we saved some money on that one.
About how much?
I'm not going to give you an exact amount without looking at something, okay?
All right, so how about if you go find out, and I'll wait until you come back with those figures? Or maybe
Let me tell you what the
Walton?
other projects are he worked on.
Okay.
He worked on, when we did the courthouse over here, the outside and the roof, he did that. That was a $5 million project. When we redid the outside of this building and the roof, that was about a $2.5 million project. Mm-hmm. He did the FMB, the Fleet Maintenance Building. He did the second floor of the Public Safety Building and the shooting range. He did the roofs at KCC and the roofs out here. He did the generator over at the PSB. Those are all pretty big projects. And if they're millions of dollars, and we would have somebody come in from the outside and pay the fee My educated opinion is it would have cost us more.
At least 10%?
Well, the normal fee for something like that is anywhere between 7 to 10%, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't give you the exact number, but I'm not going to drive out to KCC and come back and give it to you, so.
You don't have your computer with you? Through the chair to Barna or Patty, would you guys happen to have any figures on savings?
I would have to defer to Mr. Kupfer on those. I was not informed to prepare that for tonight.
But it is apparent that money has been saved by having these positions. Thank you.
I believe, if I'm correct, please correct me if I'm wrong. What you're asking is if this could have been saved by hiring an outsider, but right now we're talking about somebody else doing the same job, so it would not be any, how do we know what will be saved? It will be the same
Well,
thing.
my understanding is when we are paying a salary of an E9 at $141,651, and we're asking him to manage a $5 million project, if we pay him 7 to 10%, that's more than $141,000. So that savings indirectly, even though it's not direct, it is money being saved
Okay,
to the
but we're not-
taxpayers and to the county.
Okay, but actually, this position is being replaced with in-house, and we do have engineers in there, which I believe Shelley's engineer, and we have another 3 or 4 engineers in there. So we
I
have a
don't believe we
position
have
that
3 or
could
4.
supervise-
We have, I believe, 2. We have Clement, and we used to have an EIT. I don't know if we still do. And I believe in the last budget, there was another engineer that was hired.
Okay, Shelley, how many engineers do we have in the department there?
5, and it would go to 4.
Okay, thank you.
They all have their PEs.
No.
Then they're not, okay.
They
So-
are engineers, they are not all licensed. There are,
Which is the same as what the present one is, pretty much.
No.
Right, it doesn't have its license. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
So there is a big difference. I know I work in engineering, and I work with PEs, and I work with, there's a big difference between a PE and who can stamp plans and who can't.
Well, and that's the way you say the other guy doesn't have the P, whatever that is. Or
so right now, there are 3 of us that are licensed, and the 4th one is going through, has passed the exam and getting the paperwork in place to get his license. So he has passed the exam.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Supervisor?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Let me see, where are we at? Sorry. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number of comments tonight. I don't want to take too much time rehearsing them again, but I find them interesting in that they may play a little bit fast and loose with some facts. In any case, Shelley, you still there? Your predecessor was Ray Arbit?
Yes.
Was he an engineer?
I believe he held an engineering degree. I could be wrong, though. I don't know, Jim, do you know? I think he was an engineer.
Okay. We asked a number of questions during the Finance Committee, and we understood that there was a difference in that you are a licensed registered engineer, and you could take those responsibilities and absorb those rather than them being deferred to another individual. Was that accurate?
Yes, as long as it's within our engineering degree, yes. So the 4 of us hold civils.
Okay. So I appreciate that. Another statement that was made was regarding the job center. Are we the developer on the job center?
That is a hired contract for, I'm assuming design, that's a hired contract. If it's specific, I could defer to Jim.
What is our role or responsibility in the development of the site?
And my understanding is we are reviewing the plans, specifications from the designer, and that would be, any comments we have would go back to them.
Okay. Who would do that review then, is my question.
So right now there is a team of us, so it includes human services as well as myself.
Okay. So that position would not have any role with regard to the job center?
At this time, it was not allocated to that person, correct?
Okay, I appreciate that, because my understanding was Bear is the developer. They are developing the property. We give input, but we do not manage it. We don't have any on-site responsibilities or duties. Fair enough?
Yeah, I would probably do check-ins. I wouldn't just let that go, but we would do random check-ins for inspection
Okay,
purposes.
but we wouldn't be hiring somebody or employing or deploying somebody specific to that position?
That would not be
way.
my intent.
Okay. We asked another series of questions around role responsibilities, and I believe your comment was that the positions could easily be absorbed within the department. So, Shelley, I lost you.
Shelley?
Oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
I've been
Sorry.
married a long time. I get ignored at home, too.
I apologize.
My understanding was that your impression last week during the Finance Committee meeting was both of these positions would be absorbed within the department without difficulty.
And I had voiced a little bit concern on the project engineer side of it,
On the
correct?
project engineer, which is then tonight the focus of a new position, yes?
Correct.
Okay. You've answered my primary questions. I'll let you go back to the conversation. So, number of things that I heard so far were, I'll call them misinterpretations, in that the job center is not ours. We don't hire a person. This position would not be accountable for it. So that is a misinterpretation of the information that we've been provided with. Another misinterpretation is regarding an engineer. Ms. Billingsley is an engineer. She was hired as an engineer, and she had indicated clearly that she would be able to take on many of those responsibilities. So I don't see where that is in conflict either. I've heard a lot of references to historic data, but I have not seen anywhere where anyone could produce a number that said these were the savings that we achieved in any of these positions. In fact, what I heard was reticence to try to do so because those are subjective numbers. It's very difficult to measure that objectively. So that's not an objective statement in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. The other then I get down to is Wisconsin Education Extension. Being on PDEC for a number of months now and having attended it before I was elected to this position, what I've seen is a lot of the WEE positions tend to be a revolving door. People come and go pretty quickly. They don't stay very long. Amy stayed a long time, and she did an exceptional job. She's now with a charitable organization in town here and will continue to drive benefit. But most of the positions appear to be, I'm working on my master's, and this is a great opportunity for me to be employed and work on my master's. 3 of them have left similar conditions. So the decision to not fund the position for this year doesn't create a hardship. I believe the comment was, we don't even have to pay for it unless we fill the position. And this is where I was confused then. Who hires for this position? Is it the county that does the interviewing and the hiring? Or is it an appointed position that comes out of Madison by the University of Wisconsin Education? It's not us. So it's not our position to fill. We don't hire for it. We don't interview for it. It's they who appoint to it. So again, I'm confused as to how we're so heavily vested in that. I do believe Amy brought value, but our question was around when a new person would be appointed. Well, we don't even have a director for our area right now. Kenosha is being managed by someone from an adjacent county. So hiring into that position is going to take time, and then, as I said, we don't do the hiring. So I'm confused by the concern there. So based on the information, we asked, did our due diligence, made our inquiries, and I believe I heard the comment earlier, it's not for us to micromanage. Thus, I'm trying not to micromanage. It was the understanding that the director of the department, the county executive, felt that change could be managed and should be managed. So we expected a change. We made a vote and elected to drop 3 positions, 1 that is not supported currently, 2 that could be absorbed, and 1, as we've heard tonight, could be replaced in a different role. So I don't support the second amendment, or the second motion. The first motion is intriguing to me, and I'll continue to listen to the dialogue, but I would appreciate hearing things that are, I'll call it more accurate than some of the things that I've heard so far. So I yield back. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Berg?
In reference to the job center, our project manager absolutely was involved in the determining of whether it's advantageous for us to continue to do construction or renovations to our current job center versus moving into the new job center.
That's not,
You're supposed to ask the question.
Hold on.
No, that's not his job.
hold on.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. What's your, the point that you want to ask? What is it that you want to ask?
I'm not asking anything, I'm giving a point of information.
Okay,
Mr.
the
Chair.
point of information, you can wait your turn when you speak, and then you can talk on it.
But you let other people allow them to have
They
point
were
of
answer- they were
information?
answer- they were
That's out of
answering-
order, Mr. Chair.
Well,
That's
that's
fine.
my.
I
that's my
understand.
thought. Thank you. Because if you wanna, I just asked you, what's your information? I don't think it's a laughing
and I was
matter,
giving
so-
my
Hold
information,
on a
Mr.
second,
Chair.
please. Let's keep it calm, everyone, okay? You were asked, if you were asking a question, you say no. You wanna give some information, so right now, I say you can talk about it later on. And for other supervisors, please refrain from laughing when somebody's talking, whether you like the answer or not.
However, you allow others to do point of informations.
They were asking a question. They were asking a question.
No,
So
that's
if you have a
not-
question, I'll let you ask the question. If not, then you can make your point later. Okay?
Okay, then I have a question then, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
Mr. Kupfer, can you please come to the podium? Who is still our project manager and possibly not going to be our project manager, was he involved in the process of deciding whether it was advantageous to the county to keep renovating what we have versus creating a new one?
Oh, sorry, Jim. Okay,
It's
sorry.
green, so.
The project engineer.
The project engineer at every meeting I was at was Mr. Arbit.
For the job center?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli wasn't involved in that?
No.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Okay, okay, let's see where we're at. Sorry, guys. Supervisor Kubicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to be very clear and concise, and there'll be no ambiguity or anything like that. First, I'd like to start out by saying I did support County Executive Kirkman's initial budget to this board when she read it off, 110%. What happened after going through committees and the Finance Department, now I can no longer support the budget as it's proposed. I will be voting to reinstate those 3 positions any way I can. I'm going to get them back in, and I do support law enforcement. Being involved in public safety for over 30 years myself, I understand the importance of it. Therefore, I'm very clear and concise. I will support putting these 3 positions that we've been talking about tonight back into the budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't have any more lights of any Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of want to go line by line. I've been taking notes and just address some of the what I feel are very foolish ideas and falsehoods, some of which Supervisor Bashaw has addressed. To start, we heard, why don't we use transportation dollars to fund these positions, including a UW Extension's position. And I think that's a horrible idea. The state of Wisconsin thought that was a horrible idea, and they don't allow for it anymore. It's against state law for the state to use transportation dollars unrelated to transportation, direct transportation needs. So I don't think we should embrace the opposite of that. We also heard from Director Billingsley that as it is now, we have 2 positions that she feels can be done by 1 person. what I've heard from some of my colleagues is we have to be good stewards of the tax dollars. Keeping these two positions would be good stewards, would make us good stewards of tax dollars. I guess I'm just lost on what makes it good stewardship about hiring two people to do one person's job. That's one. That's another point. We heard we can't do this because consulting costs will go up. We heard from Director Billingsley that she doesn't believe consulting costs will change at all. She would stay relatively to what they are today. But the sky is falling because that consulting cost would skyrocket. Let's ignore what Director Billingsley is saying and just make up our own facts. Additionally, we heard that we can't get rid of an engineer. Engineer is a valuable person to have. What we heard from Director Billingsley is that we're not getting rid of an engineer. The amended budget in front of us tonight does not get rid of an engineer. Neither of the three people that were getting eliminated in this budget are licensed engineers. So while we can pretend that the sky is falling and we can make out clouds in the sky is not falling. Instead, the sky has a nice bright sun in it. We're saving tax dollars. We're combining positions. Public Works, our director has told us very black and white that she believes that her staff and potentially under Supervisor Geertsen's motion, that additional person, a new position, will be able to fulfill the duties that we have now. Is this truly about saving tax dollars, like many of you have said? Or is it keeping certain people that maybe you're friendly with or not friendly with, or you think they've had a long career with the county, so they deserve that long career forever? I'm sentimental to that. However, that's not what we're sent here to do. We're sent here to spend millions of dollars, millions of tax dollars, hundreds of millions of tax dollars in a responsible way. And employing two people to do a job that one person can do is not responsible. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess there is, let me clear the board. Everybody that asked before has spoken once. Anybody that did not speak yet wants to speak. Okay, I'm going to clear the board now. If anybody wants to speak, please go on. Okay. I believe, well, she had their hands up, so we're going to go to Supervisor Nedwesky. Huh? Oh, yeah. I thought you could scream.
Are we good? Through the chair to Clara Tappa. Regarding the Public Works customer service position that is slated to be eliminated, is there any information from the class and comp study as to what the competitive pay for that type of position is in the area?
I don't have anything specific to that position at this stage. I can tell you we did not have it for reclassification in this initial stage.
Do we have any other customer service professionals that work for Kenosha County? In any department that are considered customer service?
Many of our employees do customer service type work.
So how does the salary and benefit package of this particular position compare to other customer service type positions of other employees of Kenosha County?
Those are a variety of positions and a variety of different
How does
types
the
of
customer
work. So
service position that we're talking about tonight compare to the salary and benefit package of, say, perhaps the sheriff? So we talked about what the pay and benefit cost was to the levy for this position. How does that compare to what we're currently paying the sheriff?
It's probably in the $30,000 less range.
So this customer service position is less than the sheriff in terms of total cost?
In terms of the salary,
No, total cost.
I don't have those roll-ups on those
Finance?
positions.
Does finance have that number?
If you're talking about their choices in health insurance, that would make a difference, et cetera.
I guess what I'm asking is, for the duties of this position, as the director of HR, who also makes a considerable salary for this county, is this a competitive wage?
Yes. We wouldn't have said it
So
at
what
that
other counties in
pay
the
grade.
state have this position?
The superintendent position?
Yes.
I don't know off the top of my head. When we look at where we are placing positions, it's based on the responsibility and authority of that position, what's required for that position, decision-making, environment, those types of things.
But how do you devise what the wage should be? Is it based on market value? And what is that market value? Are there other counties in the state that have this position? And if so, what is the salary and benefit package?
So again, if you recall from the presentation by the classification and compensation consultant, when we are looking at individual positions, we look at all of those different job traits, and they provide us with recommendations based on those job traits compared with other similar positions within their market data. And I did share this position with the classification and compensation consultant, and he was comfortable with where we had it positioned.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Director Billingsley. To your knowledge, or anyone in the room who works for the county, does Kenosha County face any liabilities because the current project manager engineer was not a licensed engineer?
I don't believe so. I believe most of the designs were outsourced, which would be what you would require the stamp for.
So going forward, with you in place and the other engineers on staff, would the same outsourcing be necessary?
Depends on the projects, but I would believe mechanically or structurally, yes, those would still be outsourced.
So no change?
Likely no.
So in the meeting last week where I asked you for this particular position, the project management engineer, what percentage of the job would be able to be absorbed by you and your staff? You didn't give me an exact percentage number, but you stated that a portion of it would be able to be absorbed. Do you have a more clear answer tonight? Because we have heard, as Supervisor Rodriguez said, that the cost will be astronomical if we eliminate this position in terms of consulting fees or contracting fees. Can you quantify that?
So I can give some examples of projects that he did that would still be outsourced to a designer per se. Would be like the ceremonial courtroom. That's a specialized project, would be designed external, brought in. It would have done that either way, correct? KCC roofs, that's usually a roof consultant that comes in, gives you an evaluation, gives you plans and specs. That goes into the bid package, that gets bid. A Anderson Arts renovation restoration project, that would be a specialized consultant that we would hire, knowing historical buildings. That would be a project that would be planned, spec'd, bid out. So those are examples of projects that, regardless of this position or not, would still go through the design process if that, because of not a licensed engineer and probably not the expertise in those type of projects to do the design aspect of it.
So, to the best of your ability, can you summarize what it is the county would be losing by eliminating this position?
So there was, this position had a mechanical engineering degree, so they were more expertise in the HVAC, the generator type of systems. So therefore, a lot of what my understanding with the project being, this position being created was to develop a strategic plan of all of the county facilities, how they need to be monitored for life expectancy of those certain components. That has been done, so we are on a path of, okay, now we know which generator needs to be replaced, which HVAC system needs to be upgraded. That design would go out, and it would be managed the same way. Under this program, it's a project manager, so they would do the construction inspection side of things.
But if we didn't do the combined position,
Okay.
where would we be without this project manager position?
Right, I think without the position, it would be difficult to absorb some of the customer service, some of these small projects like culvert replacements, and some of these construction inspections, touch base with these inspectors on a day, weekly basis, depending on what type of project we have. So it's that touch base that this would provide as well.
And would anyone who is currently employed in these positions slated to be eliminated be eligible to apply for the proposed newly combined position?
They both would qualify under the requirements of this position.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Billingsley, one more time. You won't have to go to the gym tomorrow. On the project management engineer position, we talked about design. So that position currently doesn't design anything?
Couldn't design plans that needed to be stamped by a licensed engineer, correct?
Okay, and that's what we use at the county, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then those plans, some of those plans need to go to the state to get approved?
Correct. Some would need permits.
From the time that would happen, does the person currently in that position solely approve the designs? Let me back up. Solely reviews the plans, or is there a group you that do that? I'm not sure of the process.
Okay, I believe the facilities director and the project engineer both review those plans for the maintenance requirements and et cetera, as far as they fit into the building. So they do some review, correct?
Okay, and would they make suggestions if they saw something that just didn't look right?
Correct.
Okay. And then you talked about early on how much work that both of these positions do. What percent, are they still doing that same amount of work? Is it more, is it less?
I would say it depends on the day but from the numbers I've seen, customer service, because of the procedures that we have it's dropped in requests. And then on the engineer side, there are projects that I kind of went through as far as the last 10 years and the CIP is moving forward that are strictly designed to this engineer, and we're talking anywhere between 2 to 3 projects a year.
And the 2 to 3 projects a year, is that a 40-hour plus a week, 52 weeks, or how many weeks?
Right, it depends on in the process it is. If it's design, you're waiting for the designer to give you project plans back, so you're done reviewing those and sending comments back, so it's kind of an iteration. And then when you go into construction, it depends on the type of project, how much time you're gonna spend to that. A very detailed project, you're gonna be out there touching base once or twice a day. Some
Okay.
less detailed, you might be stopping out a couple times a week.
Okay. And under the customer service position, again, how much work is that involved weekly, monthly, daily?
So the general duties were general projects. So during the winter, they have certain projects they work on. During the summer, they'll do like the pavement marking program, and then they'll handle municipal service requests or county service requests as far as anybody that comes in with questions. They have to go out in the field and meet and talk about remedies that they could do, those type of issues. So it kind of ranges on an average, but I would say that they probably, our majority of their days is functional in the fact that you could add a project or two to that.
Would you say that for both positions? I guess it would depend on the project.
Depends on the project.
Okay. Speaking of the created position now, So if there's times where there's nothing going on, what, how it is now when there's nothing going on, now this new position is going to be much busier.
Correct. Correct. They can fill in for any openings if they have a downtime helping Matt, the director of parks, out in the parks facility doing construction or investigation into a future project. They could be helping with, such as the golf project this year with the irrigation system. They could be out helping the golf director do those type of projects, which, you know, probably doesn't have the expertise in-house to manage those. He could help the highway commissioner with little variety of whether it's pacer ratings or doing some checks of which pavement markings need to be enhanced next year. They could be gathering data for sign inventories. So there's a lot of different variety that could be added.
Do you see a time where that position, that single position, would be overburdened at any part of the year?
I mean, there could be times that happens, but that definitely could come back on the others in the office, the engineers that are in the office, that could aid in any of those duties.
Okay, I yield. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose.
I thought when this compromise position was created for our approval, we were just, going to combine the job duties of the two old positions into one, that we would enhance it a bit with a professional engineer. Thus, we wouldn't be outsourcing to some design agent company to do other things. There, I can see a savings. One person doing the job of two with enhanced qualifications and a substantial salary as we pay the professional engineer and the public service superintendent now, but saving one salary. But now that we've flushed it out, that is not what is happening here tonight. We've downgraded the position as a compromise to sort of, in a way, gain support of two sides, but it's just not going to work. And if that's what the proposal is, and I thought that Mr. Gersten would address that and agree with what I was saying, but the silence indicates that it is not. It is just a downgraded position. I think that's a complete waste of money, unnecessary. The committee's thought of eliminating those two positions with the Director of Public Works representing to the committee at that time, that those duties of those two positions could be absorbed. That's now seems more logical because that's what the committee was presented with, and now we're hearing an entirely different story tonight. So I can't support this so-called compromise. It's not a compromise. It's just a new job, a filler. That's the way I view it. So, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gersten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One comment that was made earlier was the previous Public Works Director, a licensed engineer. He wasn't a licensed engineer, so when we hired the new director, we added one more licensed engineer to our total quota of licensed engineers. And as far as my silence, I didn't intend to be silent. I did have my light on the whole time. But I am confident that this position will fulfill the same duties as previously were fulfilled. While it's at a lower cost, we're saving money. It was properly costed out by the class and comp experts. So based on the workload that needs to be accomplished, this job can be done. One of the things I proposed in the budget was to take a look at the CIP. And we're hearing a lot now about why that will be a good idea. We're hearing a lot about cost. We're hearing a lot about project managers. I did hear Terry talk about what we did before where we had a project manager. I remember his name, Rudy Ferraro. We did do that. We would get in the the ditch with the guy, and he would look at the foundation and make sure that that the contractor wasn't doing an unauthorized change order to save money or some other thing that would harm us on a building that we want to keep for 50 years. But it would be interesting to see if the work that we're doing has some project management type tasks embedded into it. It's hard to believe that this one position was managing $100 million of projects, saving all of this money without some of that work being loaded in through contracting. Now, if we look at our CIP practices, we may get some analysis of that, and we may be confident of that. But going back to the idea, is this a downgrade? I do believe that the best solution to this is taking the recommendation of our new Public Works Director, approving the new job. The same level of work will be accomplished that was accomplished previously. And through the chair to the director, to Director Billingsley. Do we have an employee on staff that can fulfill all of the HVAC requirements?
We do have the Director of Facilities that is very knowledgeable in HVAC systems.
Is that Mr. Storino?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield.
Okay, thank you. I was just asked if we can have a few minutes recess. Would that be okay with everybody? Or 5 minutes?
I might lose my pen. Well, I was told last year it went past midnight, so.
I don't know if it did or not. I think midnight's been that milestone.
Shelley's recommendation is really the best way to go, you know. You're getting the same work done.
This year. Okay, Supervisor Gersten, I believe you were done with your comments, correct? Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nudo. Regarding the UW Extension position that was eliminated, I see both sides of the coin with both Supervisor Gashke and Bashaw, and my general thinking on that is to get the new director position installed and then reevaluate the positions once the director position is in place. So I just wanted to say those comments I think it's important to get organized in the UW Extension side with the new director.
Thank you. Carol, Supervisor Stuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You need to be recognized to call the question. I think it's pretty unfair. Most of the guys, they spoke a couple times, and there are some supervisors that never spoke. So you can call, you need to be recognized before to call that. Supervisor Stuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Director Billingsley, I just have a couple quick questions. Thank you. Being on Public Works Committee, I have learned a lot about the current engineer position and the cost savings that has happened to the county in the past. I think it was really phenomenal the way they were able to work on some of the bidding and saving the county in that way on the past projects. My question is looking into the future. What projects do we currently have on deck, and do you feel that can be efficiently handled by this new proposed combined position that's being discussed this evening?
Those that I have currently assigned to what would be the facilities engineer was the courtroom murals, the KCC generator, which would be coming in 2023. I have the possible KCC renovation, which was currently assigned to the director as well as human services. And then I also had the Kemper exterior tuck pointing would have been assigned. So I would have had three projects.
And you feel that the proposed combined position would be able to
Yes.
efficiently handle that?
Correct.
Another thing that I heard you mention at last week during the Finance Committee was in the committee you stated that this customer service position that currently exists was unique. You'd never seen a position like this before, and that if you were to create a position, it wouldn't look like it is now. Could you expound upon that just a little bit?
Yeah, so in customer service, which I'm going to speak in my past life, customer service, there were quite a range of questions and concerns that came in. So it really went across what was the concern of the customer that's coming in. That would be directed to an engineer if we thought that was applicable. It could be directed to, I used to call them engineer techs, would be similar to this project manager. And those kind of went out to a variety of people depending on what the issue was. So that's how I would have approached this if and when some of those positions may have come vacant. I would have probably looked at this as a possibility moving forward.
Okay, and then now speaking about this combined position, are you confident that the tasks handled by the person previously would be able to be efficiently spread out by everybody without putting an undue burden on any one department in particular?
Under this project manager scenario?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Supervisor Poole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I attended a Public Works Committee meeting recently, I did hear that the energy studies are winding down, so there would be less need for the facilities engineer. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody else has spoken once. Supervisor Gens.
I have nothing more to say, but I can't figure out how to shut my light off.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had quite a little bit of discourse about facilities and what's being done as far as project management, and some discourse about Bachelor of Science versus civil engineer. And it's been my experience that Bachelor of Science, in terms of the capability we currently have, reviewing documents, going over plans and so forth, entirely capable, entirely competent. No, they can't sign off, they can't actually do drawings and so forth, but that's not what's really needed for the vast majority of the job description as it's currently being done. So in a way, that's actually more cost-effective than having to have a specific civic engineer hired because they have a higher price tag. So when I take a look at cost savings and efficiency, what we have right now really is not that bad. It's a pretty good deal. These are inflationary times, no surprise to anyone. There's more money chasing fewer qualified applicants. See it all the time. If we go and make a modification and get rid of these two positions, we have to hire back, we say, with another position. But are we really gaining efficiency? Are we really going to hire a civic engineer in place of what's there? Supervisor Rose makes a good point. No, we're dumbing down the position. We're basically going to ask the same level of competency to do more work. It just doesn't make sense. So the real interesting part about this, and it's kind of galling to a certain extent, is we talk about economy, savings, we are in inflationary times, how we have to retain the brightest and the best. And right after our presentation for the Finance Committee that dealt with this, we sat through an hour and a quarter of wage and compensation and equity and what we're going to do by giving people raises to keep them so they don't go elsewhere. We have actually a proven team, if you want to call them a team. They're, again, probably the two most disparate portions in Public Works. One who meets with the public and remediates things that happen during Public Works operation on roads, and a position that deals with planning and review of documents. So again, you want to combine these, you're going to put them all under one. I mean, I think it's a stopgap measure. It's just a thing we're talking about that really won't be getting us where we want to go. There was a comment made that really there's not been enough elucidation on money that's been saved. It's been just kind of talk here and there. So let's do a specific, shall we? Let's go to evaluation period 3/20, which would be March of 2020 through 3/21. Just going to look at one little area right here. And we're talking about the existing job center down on South Sheridan Road. Now at that time, it wasn't really fully fleshed out, should we stay or should we go? We knew if we stayed at that job center, we have to put a bunch of money into it. And there was concern about the facilities people and about the employees in there that the windows were failing. And the windows would basically deteriorate, let mold and mildew in, we'd have an untenable situation. So they had bids come out, and bids to remediate the situation, $250,000. That was the plan. Well, facilities got involved and said, let's take a look at this. Yeah, there is some thermopane issue where condensation is getting in between the two panes. And in certain areas, there are a little bit of deterioration around the window areas. But basically, for the next 5 years or so, they're not going to fail. They're not really going to go south, that we have to take immediate action and do anything. It's probably better if we just wait and decide what we're going to do with this building first. If we're going to stay here, yes, by all means replace them, but it's not a hot item list. So for that particular one, we're taking a look at, if I can get to the proper area here, $250,000 saving to the taxpayer because we didn't jump in willy-nilly. Who knows what an outside consultant might have said? They might have said this, that, the other thing, but they weren't intimately familiar with this building being there on site day in, day out. So when you say that you're going to save the taxpayers money, what are you going to do? Are you going to take the money out of one pocket and you're going to put it in the other? Is that really how you save money? You condense a position into two for the sake of having enforcement be beefed up? I say you do both. I say we're a county rather, on the move. I'm saying for the small amount that it takes to keep this perpetuated, we have a winning team. We don't have people that are scrambling and, oh my goodness, what are we going to do here? We have something that's worked, it's proven. So again, county board, do whatever they want to do. Combine it. But Supervisor Rose is exactly right. If you are going to go with the hybrid position, then you better darn well upgrade it. You better darn well have a full civic engineer in place, and then that civic engineer, when he's not too busy, can go out and talk to people about the ditches and the mailboxes and so forth, because that's your combined position. So I am full favor of restoring the budget as presented by our county executive, not with our little tinkering back and forth. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Supervisor Bashaw. Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry. Supervisor Decker.
I haven't spoken yet.
I thought you did. You just
No,
at
I
the
have not
point of-
spoken yet.
Yeah, you just at the
Yeah.
point of order, sorry.
So I obviously was the one that made the motion to pull these two positions and listened to Clement and Shelley speak at our meeting. And obviously Clement was not in favor of removing the position. And Shelley was, I would say, not excited about it. But I'm very glad that she worked this past week on coming up with a position that would help Clement and help her to help the other facilities department and create one position. Shelley's new here. I think we should trust her judgment on what she wants to see or how she wants her department run. Let her lead. Don't expect her to do whatever the previous director did. Shelley has a license. Shelley's a licensed engineer. The previous director, if I'm wrong, correct me, was not a licensed engineer. So that means we have one more engineer just to start because Shelley's here. So that takes a lot of the burden off from the one position that we already have one built-in extra engineer with Shelley being here. Even though I made the motion to remove these two positions, I am in favor. I will vote to support Supervisor Geertsen's motion because the director wants that. And she's the one running it. We're not supposed to be micromanaging. That's not our job. We are allowed to pull positions. We're also allowed to add positions. So someone that doesn't want to pull positions, that doesn't think that's in our duties, then they shouldn't be I don't understand how they can support adding positions but not pulling positions. But again, I'm going to defer to Shelley on her expertise and knowing her department and how she wants to run her department. And that's why I'm going to support Supervisor Geertsen's motion, and I'm going to vote no on the substitute motion by Supervisor Gentz. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a question asked previously by Amanda, I believe. And I'd like clarification from it. So if Clara Tappa could, through the chair to Clara Tappa. Ms. Tappa, were you able to identify what the pay scale is for the incoming sheriff? I recognize we have a sheriff that's been enrolled for 20 years and may have a compensation package that is outside of what the structure is currently. So what is the pay scale for the incoming sheriff?
The salary for Kenosha County Sheriff set for 2023 is $114,742.
114,732.
742.
So $15,000 below the customer service. I'll describe it that way.
No.
Please explain.
The municipal superintendent, that current pay grade is, it tops out at $87,639.
tops at 80,739, but the current position is paying at, the person in the position is paid at?
That pay grade tops out at 87,639.
The current position is filled, correct?
Yes.
And its compensation is? You're giving me the salary range, you're giving me the textbook. I'm asking the individual's compensation is currently?
I am not certain where he is currently at.
The number I've heard several times this evening is 129,517.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The number I've heard several times this evening is 129,517.
That's the full value of that position, so that's
Okay.
salary plus roll-ups.
Okay. And the sheriff would have salary plus roll-ups as well, but that pay scale comes in substantially below this before roll-ups. I see you have help, please. Patty?
If I could, our calculation of the sheriff position with roll-ups.
Could you please speak in the mic?
Our calculation of the sheriff's position with roll-ups, so a comparable comparison, would be 172,978.
Okay, so there's a substantial difference. I wanted that clarified because the question was asked and it wasn't clearly answered. And I'd like to understand it because I know our deputies and our sheriff, you know, they are the line of defense between us and the bad guys. Say it bluntly, they put their lives on the line, so I want to make sure that the two did not equate. Another comment that was made, thank you, ladies, I appreciate it. Another comment that was made was around whose responsibility it is to manage that department, and clearly, I see it as the director of the department who manages it and defines what the roles, responsibilities, job descriptions, et cetera, are for it. And I would defer to her, Ms. Billingsley, to provide us that insight and direction, which she has done. Based on that, I am supportive of the initial resolution, or initial motion, not the second motion, as I said earlier. However, I understand the concern. I've had calls within my district as well from individuals who work closely with the, I'll call it customer service position because that's how it was described. And they are quite concerned about having that capacity available to them. I appreciate that the new position maintains that capacity and will continue to support them and make sure that they have their needs met. Another comment that was made that I appreciate a lot is around change. I don't know if you ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese, but the mice get stuck on the first block of cheese and pretty soon it's exhausted. You have to move forward. Ms. Billingsley is moving forward. She's defining what her department looks like and how it executes as it moves forward, and I think we should give her every luxury to do that. I think we should support her 100% in doing so. We set policy, we don't execute. It is her job and responsibility to execute. So that's my points. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
Guess what I'm going to say?
Uh,
I call the question.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, move to call the question by Supervisor Franco, second by Supervisor Berg.
This is on
It's
calling
not,
the
yeah, just on calling the question. If you want to stop talking, you vote yes. If not, you vote no, and I believe it takes, what, 2/3? So, and it's non-debatable, so. 2/3. Yeah, yeah, so.
All right, this passes 21-2.
Okay. Now, I'm going to clear the board, and we're going to take a vote on the motion from Supervisor Gantz. And before we do that, can you or someone read what the motion is, please?
I will attempt to get it correct. It is a motion to substitute the amendment to restore the positions of Community Development Educator at $44,900, Municipal Public Customer Service Superintendent at $129,517, and Project Engineer at $141,651.
Okay. Everybody's clear what what the motion is. Okay, if you wanted to support the motion, you vote yes. If you don't, you vote no. And,
No, it goes back to
yeah, that's it. Okay, and then if it's voted no, we go back to
And
the
it's just
first
a
motion.
majority.
Okay, and this is
right?
just a majority vote, and I believe somebody wants to roll call, which they're doing it already. Okay, let me vote. Okay,
The motion fails. The vote is yes, 10, no, 13.
okay, we're gonna clear the board, and we go back to the motion by Supervisor Gersten. I already see a couple lights there, so Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to call the question.
Okay. Question is called by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Rose. Again, this is non-debatable. It takes 2/3. Yes to close discussion, and no to keep on going.
The call to question passes. 21 yes, 2 no.
Okay, so now we're gonna vote on the motion of Supervisor Gersten. Could someone please, County Clerk, read what the motion is?
An amendment to add the new position of Project Manager to the 2023 Budget Policy Resolution 4 at the cost of $141,000 to be funded by highway aids.
Okay, so vote yes if you're in favor of approving Supervisor Gersten's motion, no if you're against it.
The amendment passes 14 yes, 9 no.
Okay, now, on the main question, which that would be, can we read the main motion with the amendment?
No, we're on the motion to move the budget as amended.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what,
where we're at.
yeah, that's what I mean. So, to read it, what he says.
There's nothing to read.
Okay. Okay, so everybody knows what it is. Okay, so on,
Back to the original
back to the original motion
Motion.
as amended.
as amended.
As amended. Okay, and that's what I wanted to see, what the amendment was. Again, Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make, well, first I'll direct everybody to their budget resolution. If you want to scroll to page 13, give folks a minute to get there before I continue. Okay, I'm going to start now. During the Finance Committee meeting, there was some language added to the 10th, be it further resolved. Give you a second to count down to 10. Specifically, without going back into the whereas, this, be it further resolved, is in relation to Corporation Council's budget that is used to hire outside counsel, conduct investigations, et cetera. In the committee, the language, quote, "not to exceed 200% of the current year's budget" was added. I would make a motion to strike that language, and if I get a second, I'll elaborate as to why. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Nedwesky. Anything else you want to say,
Yeah,
Supervisor?
I'll just elaborate on that. So this fund is the fund that Corporation Counsel Joseph Cardamone and his team use, whether it be to hire outside counsel to represent the county in litigation, respond to a claim, or potentially conduct investigations of numerous types. Through the chair, I'll start just right off the bat. Through the chair to Corp Counsel, I'm going to ask for your opinion as leader of your office, not so much as the lawyer, just it's your budget. You would like it so that this money rolls over into your, any unused monies roll over into this line item year after year so that it's available to you and your team should you need it, correct?
I certainly don't want to question the wisdom of the board or the finance committee, but yes, it'd be my preference to return to the practice over the past several years.
And for those of you who are at the finance meeting, forgive me, but I'm going to ask them the same questions I asked that night. Through the chair to Joe, do you know when litigation potentially could be started or filed against the county?
Certainly not with any certainty.
Do you know when an employee or an elected official may come to you or your office and request an ethics investigation?
No.
And it is typically your practice, correct me if I'm wrong, to use an outside firm, depending on the scope and the scale of an ethics investigation. You would hire somebody outside the county, correct?
So our ethics ordinance actually requires that if it's being, whether you call it an opinion or an investigation of actions that have already taken place, I am required to go to outside counsel for that.
Okay, and some time ago, several months ago, we kind of had a light moment as a county board. We shared a laugh. We asked which employees report directly to the county board and to the county executive. And can you just refresh our memory for that?
I am the only individual who has a direct line to both the county executive and the county board.
And so if a county board supervisor came to you and requested an investigation, you would do so, and same with the county executive, correct? Or you would start the process, maybe?
With the caveat that there has to be some basis for doing so, yes.
And can you just give us some background in recent years, this year, previous years? Have you used 100% of your budget in that? Have you maybe carried over a little bit?
The last couple of years have been significantly stranger. I think everyone would agree to that, no matter what your perspective is. The last couple of years, I don't believe we've had any amount or any significant amount that's carried over. I'm looking at the budget people and they're agreeing with me. There was a period of a number of years where we didn't have to utilize or didn't have to utilize in any great degree those accounts, and so there had built up some cushion, but that has not been my experience the last couple of years, and I can't say for certain, but I anticipate we will likely spend most of what's in that account this year as well.
Okay, and through the chair to you, Joe, or to the finance team, any event that you needed money out of this account and you were out, what is the process to get more money in there in the middle of a year before budget season? If you want to answer, or if finance wants to answer.
Yeah, I beg the finance team. So.
Sure, so the process is for legal fees for the corporation counsel, it would fall under the umbrella of the county executive, so we would have budget resolution language, why my phone lights on, that would allow us to move appropriation from others within under that umbrella. That would include information technology, human resources, finance, and a few others.
So Joe would go then to the county executive, whoever he or she may be at the time, and say, I need additional dollars, can you send dollars my way?
We would make a budget modification at that time, correct?
And would the county board be involved in that?
No, that is allowed under the rules within the budget resolution.
Okay. So what I want to paint for my colleagues tonight is, let's say we had a situation where we had a county executive who was under investigation, and we did not know that because, say, there was a whistleblower that alerted Joe's office to some misdoings, and Joe was well underway into an investigation. What this could potentially allow, I'm not saying this is a cure, but what this could potentially allow is additional dollars to be in that line item from previous years so Joe could continue an investigation if needed, instead of the other side of that coin, going to the county executive saying, Mr. or Mrs. County Executive, I need more dollars in this fund. We've expended all the dollars available, and I can't tell you why. County executive is going to immediately want to know why, and I think he or she should know why, or I would understand why they would want to know why. Then we have an instance, potentially, where the county executive is saying, okay, now I'm under investigation, I'm not giving you any more dollars. Why would I want to help you with an investigation against myself? The county executive has a lot of power, whoever he or she is, and this board has a lot of power, whoever the 23 are that sit in these seats. I think we should do our due diligence to help Joe and help his office as much as we can to give him every resource possible that should we find ourselves in a situation like I've described, that he potentially has the money. Again, this isn't saying he will always have the money, but this is saying if there's a year where he doesn't use a large portion or a small portion of that money, it rolls over so that it's available to him. I understand where the Finance Committee was coming from, where they were worried that this would turn into quite a large fund, and we've heard from Joe that that's usually, or maybe never, been the case, where maybe some years money has rolled over, but it's never progressed so high because usually there's some business that his office has to attend to via outside counsel or what have you. Additionally, this has been in the budget resolution for some time. What's in front of us tonight would be undoing that language by putting this limit in place. And when we come to carryover time of year, it can always be stopped. So if it ever grew to 500, 1,000% of what it was, the previous year, we could say, all right, Joe, you've got a lot of money in this account. We're not going to carry this over in the carryover resolution. We're going to, roll it over into the general fund. But we're not there. We have never been there. And it's my opinion that when we get to that carryover resolution, we can cross that bridge when we get there. Should Joe have millions of dollars in that account, which I don't, he's smirking, I don't think that will ever happen. So I just don't think we should hamstring us. We shouldn't hamstring the county executive, and we shouldn't hamstring Joe or his office. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, I would move all previous questions.
Is that a second? Okay, so there is no second. Supervisor Besha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Rodriguez is referring to a motion and amendment which I did put forward. So I have some comments or statements around it. The budget ask this year, Mr. Cardamone, was for $100,000 in that account?
No,
80,000?
I asked for 40,000.
You asked for 40,000.
The executive added an additional 40,000 of her own initiative because she knows of a couple of matters coming up next year that she anticipates will take much of that, so.
Okay, so you asked for 40, that's your expected, and you understand the process and procedures to gain more if that resource is required. The exec increased it to 200%, so it's now 80,000. This resolution allows it to double. In other words, if you did not spend $1 of it this year, you would budget for potentially 80,000 next year, plus roll over this 80,000 into that account, having a fund of $160,000 available at that point. My understanding is historically it grew to in excess of $200,000, did it not?
There was one point where there was about $200,000 in that account, yes.
One point, and that was dissolved or taken back into the general fund by, I'll call it an accounting error. It was allowed to lapse and return to the fund.
Yes.
What's the highest expenditure that you've ever seen out of that account?
I hesitate to say. I believe that in 2021, with all of the various matters that we had going on, which included an ethics investigation, which included a review of one of our ordinances and included litigation involving the county, I believe the total was about $150,000 for 1 year. I don't know that I've ever seen it that high in the time that I've been the corporation counsel, but we did have that in recent memory.
Did that all come from budget or from rollover funds?
I believe that was all budget, and again, I'm looking at Barna, but I believe that that was after the rollover didn't occur, so.
Okay. The reason I ask is, if I manage, thankfully my wife manages my accounts at home because I'd spend it. I like to go out and get new things. But if I left that money just sit idly in an account that rolled over and kept getting larger, but I wasn't utilizing vehicles to utilize that money efficiently, I'd probably be concerned about it. That's where this concern comes from. This is a rollover fund whereby it can continue to grow without limits, no restrictions on it. So if you use 50% of what you budget for on each annum, you'd be growing an additional, in your numbers, $20,000 per year under the exec's budget, $40,000 per year. In 5 years, you're picking up another $200,000 in that fund, that account. That's a substantial bank account that's there for situations that arise. The situation of a county executive being the person under investigation and denying your ability to go out and increase the funds available so that you can execute an appropriate investigation, is there a legal situation that an exec doing so at their own benefit would put themselves in? They would be conspiring, would they not?
It's not a question that I've considered, Supervisor, so I apologize that I don't know that I can answer.
I can't either, but I'm sure other attorneys could. But it would seem to me there'd be another jeopardy that they'd put themselves in. So that's, to me, an untenable analogy or storyline. So to me, it's important that we put limits on. To roll it over at 200% of what you've requested for in budget, I'd say is pretty impressive and builds quite a fund. To roll it over 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years, I think is simply a mistake in budgeting and managing money. There is a pathway, and Mr. Barna just described it, for more resources to be acquired. There is a board that I'm sure in the situation where there were an investigation, you would have latitude to go to the chair of the board or other outside resources to address the matter if it was the executive that you were investigating in that scenario that was represented. So I can't see a scenario in my mind where you would be restricted from having the resources to execute the legal responsibilities of the county to full effectiveness. Fair statement?
Supervisor, my job is to worry about things that may never happen. So I would hope that you are correct. I can only say, as I said last week, and again, the board will do what it will do, and I will work with the resources that I'm provided. My experience with this fund has been that there may be years where it doesn't get used at all or gets used very lightly, and then you may have a couple of years like we've had where there are constant draws on it.
Sure.
So the idea obviously was to have a cushion for those rainy days. As I indicated last week, I would like to think that there is sufficient faith both in my management of the office and the county executive's stewardship of the budget, whoever they might be, that if it appears that that account has gotten to a point where it isn't necessary to put anything further in it, we won't. And again, that's happened in recent memory, at least 1 year, possibly 2, but certainly at least 1 year where there wasn't an ask for that account because of that. That's all I can say. I mean, again, I will abide by the decision of the board. I will respect it, and I will work within the parameters that I'm provided.
I appreciate your response, but based on your response, perhaps the motion on the floor should have been to put a $500,000 reserve aside just in case a scenario happened that was so extreme that we had to be able to cover it without anybody having oversight of the budget, anybody having oversight of the resource that's there. It's simply a slush fund pool that is applied per the need without ever having to request from finance or others to apply any resources toward that, and we can just leave the money sit there until perpetuity, and if it gets used, it's used. If not, it's not. I think 200% of your budget is a pretty fair and just level, and if more is needed, from what we've heard, it can certainly be garnered without too much resistance. So, thank you, I yield.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
I'm good. My question's been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other supervisors? Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, what I'm trying to highlight here is giving Joe in his office. We've heard him say to us tonight that he would hope that we would entrust him as the head of his office and managing his own budget underneath the purview of us and the county executive, but giving him every avenue for the resources that he potentially may need. So there's a little unconventional, but I'm going to take advantage of some of the folks we have behind us, and through the chair to, he's still here, so I'm going to call on him, Detective Castillo. If he could come up to the mic, I have a question for him as a detective.
What does it to do? I mean, Joe, can that be done? Can it be done? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here.
all right.
Traditionally, when you're investigating potentially a crime, is it common practice, and I'm not a police officer, so I don't know the answer to this question, but is it common practice that you may try to keep that investigation outside the knowledge of the person you're investigating? Not every case, but most cases, potentially.
Until we're ready to bring information or charges forward, yes.
Correct. So you wouldn't kind of hamstring yourself by letting that individual know, hey, you're under investigation?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, sir. That's what I'm getting at. Letting Joe have an investigation, or whoever he hires, have an investigation that somebody is not the subject, that they don't know they're the subject of. Protect the integrity of that potential investigation and protect him and his office from having every avenue that they need. And it's not just that. So we heard from Supervisor Bashaw that on top of the $40,000 that he requested, the county exec put another $40,000 in there. I'm not the county executive. I mean, I don't know what her reasoning for that was, but I would imagine it could or may have something to do with the fact that this county board, potentially the next county board, is going to be dealing with maybe a casino. Is that correct? Through the chair to Joe, do you anticipate you might be working on that? Can you just say it into your mic for me so everybody can?
Sorry, yes. I believe that the primary motivator was recognizing that we are going to be most likely dealing with the casino question. It's a highly specialized and frankly expensive field of law. I also noted, and I believe most supervisors have probably heard me now, there's significant interest in a review of our ethics ordinance. Again, that would be done by outside counsel. I've received some initial estimates, if you will, that have come in and all around the $10,000 range, depending on how much additional work would be done in terms of meeting with officials down here, briefing committees, et cetera.
Forgive me for my next question. Were you around when the first proposed Kenosha casino was in front of this county, or a previous county board? Were you corp counsel, or were you in the office at the time?
I was certainly not corporation counsel when those negotiations were going on. Because I'm not 100% certain of the timing, it's possible that I was in the office while some of those later conversations were going on, but the vast majority of that work was done by, in my mind, the legendary Frank Volpentesta, who was the corporation counsel for about 40 years, and did most of the work from the county standpoint. And even then, we had outside counsel working with us.
Okay, so through the chair to, I hate to be so broad, but I know that many, or some of you on the county board today were on the county board back then, so are you, I don't know if, no. Through the chair to Supervisor O'Day, I hope, not to put you on the spot, you were on the county board during the last casino project, is that correct?
Well, we're not going to start now, sorry. I mean, if you can answer Supervisor O'Day, go, but we're not going to try now to have questioning the supervisor, what they did or what they're going to do with anything.
To the chair, I'm not asking what he did, I'm just.
Well, I guess I'll leave it up to Supervisor
asking if he
O'Day
was on the board
wants
at the
to
time.
answer or not. It's up to you. Let me, hold on.
All right.
Okay.
Your specific question is what?
Just, were you on the board? I know
The
yourself and
casino?
Supervisor Rose have been long-term, yeah, you guys were on the board during that
I
time?
was on the board. We sent people to Connecticut.
How long, approximately, if you remember, does the whole process from when it kind of the ball gets rolling to approving our side of the casino take? Do you remember? Months, weeks?
I don't recall.
Okay, that's fine. What I'm getting at is, there's just so many big expenses, especially this one in particular, that are coming before us. I've identified what may happen. We've heard from a detective who says, we don't typically let the subject of an investigation know that they're under investigation until we're ready to act on that investigation. Let's give Joe the tools that he needs. It's been common practice in these budget resolutions the entire time I've been on the county board, for a long time before that, to my knowledge. I don't see why we would change it now. That's all.
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Interesting conversation here. This came up in Finance Committee, and I do respect Supervisor Bashaw's proposition. Why have some big slush fund that doesn't get used? And it's a thing that has to be dealt with. But I do think Supervisor Rodriguez has some valid points. I'm suggesting, and I'm not going to make it, a hybrid. You say that it can be this much per annum, it can roll over, it's going to be capped at a certain amount. That would seem to be a logical conclusion, so I'll leave it to those who have more vested interest in this discussion than myself to formulate that. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Nedwesky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very simple. Just as there are ways to go back to the board and ask for more money, there are ways for the board to say, you've accumulated too much in the fund, we're going to cap it. For now, let the man do his job. Thank you.
Any other supervisors? Okay, seeing none. Can you read the wording, please?
It was not really, I didn't get it clearly stated in the beginning. You want to strike the language. Okay, so on page 13, the 10th, be it therefore resolved, would then be amended to read, be it further resolved that any available surplus funds within the Corporation Council budget for legal services be carried forward to the next year's budget, striking not to exceed 200% of the current year budget.
Correct.
Okay, roll call has been requested. All in favor to the amendment, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
It passes by majority vote, 12 yes, 11 no.
Okay, now going back to the main motion with the amendments. Is there any discussion? Any other discussion on the main motion? Okay, then I guess we're gonna vote. Can you please, okay, can we please say what the two amendments to the motion?
So the original motion of the policy resolution 2023 Kenosha County budget as amended, amendment to add the new position of project manager to the 2023 budget policy resolution 4 at the cost of $141,000 to be funded by highway aids, along with the amendment to strike the language in the 10th whereas on page 13 so that it would read, be it further resolved that any available surplus funds within the Corporation Council budget for legal services be carried forward to the next year's budget.
Okay, is everyone clear with the motion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Supervisor Wemble?
Policy Resolution 4 as amended passes 17 yes, 6 no.
Okay.
To new business, Resolution 48 from the Finance and Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $16,155,000 general obligation promissory notes for budgeted capital projects, including road and highway improvements. This passed unanimously at committee.
Supervisor Rose.
I would move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Gersten. Supervisor Rose.
This particular initial resolution funds the capital projects in the 2023 budget. You have those listed there. It includes the road and highway improvements as well for $16,155,000. Being an initial resolution, it requires a 3/4 vote of the board, or 18 people. At the time of bonding, when that resolution will be brought, that is the second time that the board votes on it, and majority at that time is required.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we're going to vote. It's going to be a roll call vote, and we need 18 votes to pass.
Resolution 48 fails, 17 yes, 6 no.
Okay. Supervisor Basho, you had your hands up?
Yes,
Did you want to be
motion to adjourn.
recognized? I'm sorry?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second? Motion to adjourn by Supervisor Basho, second by Vice Chair Decker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Aye. We're adjourned.